I would point out that Jake's right. There are, having covered the first term of George W. Bush and also the first term of Bill Clinton, I think I have some perspective on this, and I think it's a little different from the last years of administration of a White House that by year 7 and 8 was lighting itself on fire just to get on the front page because there was so much attention on this. I'm talking about the Bush administration on the campaign that was emerging to succeed President Bush and a first-term presidency. And I know from having covered the first term of George W. Bush that we provided a great deal more access to our officials and to the president than George Bush did. President Bush came back once on Air Force One in his first term. It was his first trip. It was a 30-minute flight to Norfolk, and that was it. He did give, over the course of his presidency, he was, I think Carol pointed this out, did more of the sort of brief press encounters when he had a visitor in the Oval Office, and the pool would come in and they'd do ones and two questions and how. We've given more than twice as many solo press conferences where there are a series of questions, which does give the press the opportunity to follow up. Like Ben asks a question, then Carol, and then Jake on the same subject. You can really force the president to take a number of questions on the same subject. And I get that all of that from a White House reporter's perspective, plus more would be better. But we have to rationalize his time, and we would make judgments about when it makes sense to have him taking questions on a subject or not. But my principle from this is that having him out there, when it makes sense, as often as possible, is a good thing, and I'm trying to work to make that happen.
Thank you, Jake.
Yep.
Feel free to jump up.
Yep.
Do you guys have any questions? Scholarship students? Anything? No. All right, we're going to move on. Jackie, you've heard this discussion about the White House. How does it compare on the Romney campaign, for example? Has he made any pronouncements like, I will have a press conference every week? Remember when John McCain said that? Yeah, whatever, dude.
I came from covering Congress to covering the campaign. So this is my first presidential campaign, so I've been learning and listening to a lot of my colleagues here because I feel like that's the best way to do it because they're all really smart. One of the interesting things is Romney's campaign has always been different than the other contenders, where you went on the Rick Santorum campaign early on, you could have ended up sitting in a truck with him or at a pizza ranch in Iowa, really easily and having a conversation with him. Whereas the Romney campaign, that's one of the things, I think it's a pretty open secret, or not secret at all, that the avails are very few and far between. They're usually announced it's kind of like a pop quiz. You'll be at an event and all of a sudden there'll be, like this week, there was the press conference with Rubio. So, and they can be, a month between each other. And so there isn't as much, it's not as frequent, I think, as we would like.
I got pay lip service to the idea of press accessibility.
Not the candidate. The advisors have gotten a lot better. There's been a lot more response and a lot more engagement with press from the advisor standpoint. But I think the candidate, not as much. There's interviews with certain people, like certain networks, but not as much with just the normal rabble. I don't travel with Romney, and a lot of my colleagues do. And so I think there's been the occasional, he'll come back on the plane and say hi to everybody. And when I traveled with him from Iowa to New Hampshire, and there was a little bit of interaction there.
Didn't he hand out cookies?
That was, yeah. There was a birthday cake at one point for another reporter down the line. But the interaction is very limited, and it's a very it's been a professional campaign from the get-go.
All right, this is the first real campaign that's played out on Twitter and other new media. Of course, this White House has made great use of YouTube, Twitter. They have their Flickr page. It's a matter of some contention with photographers. The pictures are great, but some say no substitute for news photography. Do politicians, their embrace of new media, does this enhance our coverage, or is this an end run around the press? Ben, what do you think?
Well, I can't wait to hear Tapper answer this. He's actually tweeted you 9 times.
I was making fun of Jay on Twitter.
I mean, again, sort of two gut responses. The first is it goes to this point of more is better, right? So if more information is getting out to more people through Twitter and Facebook and photo sharing sites, then that's a good thing. But I don't agree with the premise that there's ever sort of a going around the national media, because we're still covering the president. We're still there every day. And even when the president does regional interviews, I mean, we've seen this several times, part of the strategy of the White House is to call in select anchors or correspondents from different regions so that that message gets out to that region, and then they end up asking him about Trayvon Martin or something in the national news, and so then it always kind of comes back to a national story because he's a national figure. So I think one of the first times the White House put out an announcement about a press conference was through Twitter. And
before they released it.
Before they released it, and that's when I thought, okay, I gotta get on this thing, because it's a news-making vehicle, and that was not very long ago, and now it's incredibly commonplace. And so, as long as you sort of get used to following it for news, you're okay. I think there's a whole separate category about whether the White House and reporters should be sort of sharing opinions and bantering and all that, by Twitter, and that's more of a personal choice, I think. But either way, we still end up covering all of it. And I think if there was some systematic use of using technology or regional media, and we didn't have access to him, that would eventually come to the fore. I mean, there would be some shadow.
All right, Jackie, we've heard that especially on the Romney campaign and the other campaigns too, that they monitor the Twitter feeds of the reporters who are covering their campaigns. What's your experience with new media covering the 2012 race?
I love Twitter. It's a lot of fun on the campaign because you really can't chronicle everything that is going on. You can, whatever event you're going to, and since I played zone and covered a lot of candidates, it was pretty cool because you really could keep people informed on what was going on. As I guess with there were complaints about certain things reporters were tweeting, and there's a lot of, occasionally there'll be some back and forth. And that, I think it's one of those mediums where it's easy to forget that it's, there's still a level of professionalism that needs to, or that could be there if you choose to. I do.
Do the campaigns use it? Do they use it to get their message out?
Yes, definitely. I think it was Newt Gingrich who tried to launch his campaign on Twitter, and it just didn't.
No one noticed?
It didn't work.
Oh.
And then bless their hearts, but yes, a lot of campaigns have used that to circulate messages, to circulate new initiatives that they're launching that week, and also that the hashtag wars that try to pick up each other's hashtags to circumvent an effort from the other camp. And so I think I think there was a story in the Post today that this is just the beginning.
Carol, what do you make of it?
I think it's a little bit of both, meaning that in some ways the things like Flickr photos that we get every month, West Wing Week or whatever, sometimes as long as it's not a substitute for getting access, it can give you a little bit of a window that you otherwise might get, and obviously it's very controlled, and those photos just don't pop up on the web, they go through a whole process and are screened. But you can get a little bit of a sense of who's in various meetings and things. Sometimes I think coverage, the internal White House covering itself goes a little far. Like after the president nominated Elena Kagan to the Supreme Court, they posted a video on that said, we caught up with Elena Kagan in the colony.
An exclusive interview with
yeah,
their
this
own nominee.
exclusive interview. It's like reporters can't get anywhere near the colonnade, and she wasn't obviously talking to any of the media, but it was just sort of amusing in the sense that it was only they could have gotten that video, and it wasn't the exclusive that they were.
Did it have any news in it? Anything you could use for your story?
No, well, that's the other thing. Then you wind up reporting on these.
So it's basically
things
like
that-
writing off a press release. It's just now it's on
Video
YouTube,
press
so
release.
it's a little more different. Okay.